In less than 3 decades, the UFC went from being banned across the United States to becoming a billion-dollar empire watched by millions worldwide. Its rise is filled with brutal fights, larger-than-life personalities, political battles, and game-changing endorsements. Today, we're diving deep into the rise of the UFC, its controversies, and how it became one of the fastest-growing sports on the planet. When the UFC debuted in 1993, it was advertised as the ultimate test. Which fighting style is the best? There were no weight classes, hardly any rules, and fighters showed up in karate gis, boxing gloves, or just bare fists. Royce Gracie, a skinny jiu-jitsu fighter, shocked the world by submitting giants, proving that technique could beat size. But the violent spectacle was too much for the mainstream. Politicians like John McCain called it human cockfighting. Pay-per-view carriers dropped it. The UFC was bleeding money, banned in nearly every state, and looked destined to die. In 2001, the Fertitta brothers and Dana White bought the UFC for just $2 million. They added weight classes, medical standards, and adopted the unified rules of MMA. Slowly, the UFC became a legitimate sport instead of a blood spectacle. But the real turning point came in 2005 with The Ultimate Fighter, a reality TV show that put the UFC on cable television. The finale, Forrest Griffin versus Stephan Bonnar, was a war. Fans called their friends, bars replayed it, and suddenly MMA was mainstream. That fight is credited with saving the UFC. The UFC's rise was powered by its stars: Chuck knockout power, Randy grit, Georges St-Pierre's dominance, and Anderson Silva's artistry brought legitimacy. Then came Ronda Rousey, who put women's MMA on the map and became a global superstar. And of course, Conor McGregor. Love him or hate him, his trash talk and knockout power made him the UFC's biggest draw. His fight with Floyd Mayweather was one of the most lucrative combat sports events of all time, showing just how far the UFC had come. But with growth came controversy. Fighter pay remains one of the biggest criticisms, with many claiming the UFC keeps too much of its billions while fighters struggle financially. Dana White's leadership style, blunt, aggressive, and sometimes controversial, has drawn both praise and criticism. Scandals over failed drug tests rocked the company, from John Jones' repeated suspensions to Brock Lesnar's positive test after UFC 200. And then the infamous McGregor versus Khabib incident in 2018, where chaos spilled outside the cage and turned into an international spectacle. These controversies hurt the UFC's image at times, but ironically, they also kept it in headlines and made fights even bigger. Despite setbacks, the UFC grew into a global powerhouse. In 2016, it was sold to Endeavor for over $4 billion, one of the biggest sports deals in history. The UFC now hosts events across the world: Brazil, London, Paris, Australia, and especially Abu Dhabi, which became a second home with Fight Island during the pandemic. Now UFC stars like Israel Adesanya, Khabib Nurmagomedov, Amanda Nunes, and Sean O'Malley draw millions of fans worldwide. The sport is no longer niche, it's global. Nothing shows the UFC's rise more than its business deals. In 2019, the UFC signed a huge exclusive broadcasting deal with ESPN, instantly boosting its reach. Sponsorships with Reebok and then Venom brought uniformity, while Modelo became the official beer of the UFC. Crypto.com jumped in with a massive deal worth over $175 million, putting digital currency logos inside the octagon. These endorsements prove the UFC is no longer just a fringe sport. It's now in the same league as the NBA, NFL, and WWE. When it comes to today, the UFC is at its peak popularity. Pay-per-view buys rival boxing, arenas sell out in minutes, and social media has turned fighters into global celebrities. The UFC Performance Institute in Las Vegas shows its investment in science, health, and training, while Dana White keeps pushing for bigger fights and global expansion. The UFC's story is one of survival and reinvention, from being nearly banned in the 90s to becoming one of the biggest sports organizations in the world. And the way it's going, it's only going to get bigger sponsorship power. Today, the UFC is at its peak popularity. Pay-per-view buys rival boxing, arenas sell out in minutes, and social media has turned fighters into global celebrities. The UFC Performance Institute in Las Vegas shows its investment in science, health, and training, while Dana White keeps pushing for bigger fights and global expansion. The UFC's story is one of survival and reinvention, from being nearly banned in the 90s to becoming one of the biggest sports organizations in the world. And the way it's going, it's only going to get bigger. So what do you think? Has the UFC reached its peak, or is the best still yet to come? Drop your favorite UFC moment in the comments. Hit that like button if you enjoyed this breakdown, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into sports history and culture. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.